Hey there everybody, Coach Brandon here, and today we're going to be going over our hook sweeps from a seated guard position. That is going to be our topic for this week. I believe we're on week 2 of December. Hook sweeps from a seated guard. First, let me show you what this hook sweep from a seated guard looks like, and then we'll start talking about some of the theories and such behind it. So, to start here, I'm going to establish one grip on hand's torso. So I have an ability to pull his torso forward. I get the second grip on his post hand so he can't post. So we set our grips. Then from the grips, we go to off balance my partner, getting him up in the air. And then once he's out of balance, now we have to go through and we have to finish the sweep. Okay? So that's generally what a hook sweep looks like. So far in our open guard game, we've learned to deal with a lot of different scenarios, mostly from the feet. We saw when we have a standing opponent, we can entangle their upper body with spider guard or collar cuff bicep. If he drops to a knee drop, we can focus our attacks on that lead posted leg with single legs, ankle picks, and ashigarami. We saw from ashigarami, we can put him down there. If that doesn't work, we can transition into X guard and we can put him down using X guard. That's all of those positions are predicated on inside position. If I have a more skilled and knowledgeable opponent who steals inside position from me, now I need to work from outside position with guards like De La Riva. De La Riva leads very well in the kickover sweeps, and we have a number of great options of kickover sweeps when we have an opponent who's on their 2 feet. We have an opponent who might try to come in and pass my guard and force the split squat position. And we saw we get frames there, and we go into a defensive cycle until we recover and establish 4 points connection. Then we had an opponent who's on 2 feet, but they didn't know how to deal with our guard because we have so many different solutions, so they stay backing away. And even against a reluctant opponent, we have the double kuchigari to sweep our opponent backward. So essentially what we've done for you so far is we've given you a complete systematic approach to fighting from the open guard against a standing opponent. So what's going to happen is your opponents are going to start to be reluctant to stay on their feet against you, especially when you start getting good at sweeping and getting underneath of them. So they're going to start to drop to 2 knees. And then we have to deal with an opponent who's trying to pass our guard from their 2 knees, where we are having a hard time getting underneath them for things like ashigarami and X guard, collar cuff bicep, etc. So when we have an opponent on 2 knees, our focus shifts, and we're going to start looking at a lot of hook sweeps. Now, regardless of which position you're working from in the open guard, whether it's an opponent who's on 2 feet, in the knee drop, down on 2 knees, or whatever, essentially all of our attacks have had a similar 3-step sequence. I apologize for not going over all this sooner. I know I've mentioned it briefly in the past, but I didn't spend a ton of time on it, so I'm going to spend more time now. All of these attacks, whether it was spider guard, collar cuff bicep, ashigarami, De La Riva, hook sweeps today, they all have this 3-step system. The first step, we need to establish some sort of working grip. A grip that will help me accomplish exactly what I want to accomplish. Once we set that grip, we're going to use that grip to off-balance our opponent. Step number 2. So when you get a grip on your opponent, don't just look for any old grip. Look for grips that are going to help you accomplish what you want to do. Grip with a purpose. Grip with a plan of attack in mind, so you're getting specific grips that are going to help you get done what you want to get done. So we establish grips. We use those specific grips to off-balance our opponent and break our opponent's stance and balance. Once we have an opponent who's out of balance, then we can move on to the 3rd step, which is finishing the technique, executing the technique, whether it be a kickover sweep, a submission attack like a triangle or an armbar, or a hook sweep, or a back tick, or what have you. It's almost always that 3-step sequence. Let me show some really quick examples. Collar cuff bicep. We saw from here. He's on his feet. We establish our grips, step 1. Step 2, I break his balance. I did that by stepping on the knee and pull. With the balance broken, now we go on to step 3, throwing up our attack. spider guard. Step one, we set our grips. Step number two, I get them out of bounds. Let me ask you this question. How do we know when we've successfully gotten an opponent out of bounds? There are three good signs. One is I can get my opponent to take a step that he didn't want to take. The second way I know I get him out of bounds is if I can force a hand down to the floor so he has to use his hand to catch his base. The third way I know he's out of balance is if I can break either his shoulder or his hip down to the mat. If I can get him to do one of those three things, you've successfully off-balanced your partner. Either gotten him to take a step he didn't want to take, get him a hand to the floor, or put one of the corners of his torso, either one of the shoulders or one of the hips, down to the floor. So in the case of spider guard, step number one, I set my grip. Step number two, I get him out of balance. In this particular variation, it's getting him to take steps he doesn't want to take. And I get him up to my hip line. And then step number three would be the execution of the technique, where we lift him up and take him up and over. Okay? Ashigarami. Step number one, I set my grips. Step number two, I off balance him by putting his hip down to the floor. With his hip on the floor, step number three, I actually finish the sweep by getting to the top position. So all of our techniques that we work from the guard, from the bottom position, have that same fundamental pattern. You get a grip, you use that grip to off balance your partner, and then once they're out of balance, you complete the technique. What I'm going to do today for the hook sweep, I'm going to show you a series of different grips. We're going to use all of those different grips to off balance our partner, and then we're going to see three different good finishing methods. Or four. Three good ones, a fourth that'll work on more naive, less skilled opponents who stay down on a knee, okay? So that's going to be the general pattern. I'm going to give you different grips, and I'm going to show you guys those first. Once we have all the grips down, then I'm going to give you guys the finish, all the finishes, okay? So let's start getting into some of the nitty-gritty details of our hook sweeps. So from a situation where I have an opponent kneeling on me, again, I want to get some sort of grip on him, working grip that will allow me to off-balance him. Now, in off-balancing from this position, I want to force Ant's shoulder to go near the mat. Now his shoulder might not go on the mat, his head might go on the mat. That's another way to tell if you off-balance your partner, is if you get his head down to the floor. So what the off-balance for the hook sweep is going to look like is I'm going to turn and look the direction I want to throw him. Anytime you want to sweep your opponent, look where you want him to land. When you look where you want your opponent to land, that's going to line your body up and make everything work together and move in the same direction so that your entire body is working unified to get maximum strength and power. And the off-balancing effect from here is always going to be the same pattern where I force his head to the floor and I get his hips up high to this position here. Then once we're up in this position, now we can go through and start finishing our sweep. So that's the situation we want to create. We want to set grips that are going to allow me to create that situation where his head is low to the mat and his hips are high and he's up in that tripod scenario. Why do we want that? Why do we want that tripod? Why is that so special? Let's go into a little bit of quadrant theory right now. And will you take a 4-point position up here by the camera? Understanding quadrant theory, the Ant's 4 limbs cover 4 different quadrants, okay? If you imagine Ant is on the face of a clock right now, with 12 o'clock pointing out toward the head, and 6 o'clock pointing out here toward the rear. This hand up here covers 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock very nicely. It covers this quadrant. This leg covers 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock. This leg, 6 to 9, and this arm, 9 to 12. So when I force Ant up into this tripod scenario, and I have one of his posts taken away, I want to apply the directionality of force to this quadrant up here. I want him to be coming up toward 11 o'clock or 10:30 somewhere. If I were to have Ant take this hand toward it and touch his opposite hip over here, and center your balance, center your body there. And I give a pushing force across, Ant's left leg is a good base of support. But if I just turn the angle a little bit, and I come here, and I start to apply a pushing force in this direction, I can break him down to his shoulder. Okay? So, in the hook sweep, when we off balance our opponent and force them up to that tripod position, our goal is to take him, sweeping him up in this direction, not straight to the side. It's incredibly important you guys understand the notion of directionality of force. A large amount of force being applied in the wrong direction will never be as effective as a small amount of force applied in the proper direction. I'll say that again, it's so important. A great amount of force applied in the wrong direction will never be as effective as a small amount of force applied in the correct direction. So be very mindful when you guys are applying force for the hook sweep to take them up in that 10:30, 11 o'clock direction. Now let's go back to our details of gripping, off balancing, and finishing. Focusing on gripping right now. For our grips are almost always similar in that I have one grip committed to the post so he can't base his hand out on the floor. Okay? We saw that if he can't base his hand on the floor, that's what opens up an avenue for me to take him over in that 11 o'clock or 10:30 direction. So one of our grips is going to be committed to taking away his post. My second grip is always going to be on the torso somewhere on the torso. We're going to look at a number of different grips that I can use, but they're all one on the torso and one on the post. The post keeps him from posting. The torso hand is what allows me to pull my opponent and get him out of balance and get him up into that weak, poor posture position. So that's always the pattern. One grip on the torso, one grip on the post. We're going to look at a number of different torso grips. There's a couple different post grips for your post arm, but most of the variants come in your torso hand. Let's take a look at some of those variations. One grip, and I would say this is the best grip of all, is an over the back belt grip. There's a few different ways to get this. In grip fighting, I can come in, I can take a cross collar grip on Ant and pull down so that his head and shoulder come low, and I reach over the shoulder and I grab the belt. Let's move a little closer here just for the gripping details. Right here. So our number one grip for hook sweeps, the strongest grip of them all, is an over the back belt grip. There's several grips we're going to look at, and in truth, all the belt grips are probably the stronger grips. I'm going to show you 3 different belt grips, and then a number of different grips. But all the belt grips are the strongest. And if there's one of the belt grips that's stronger than all of them, I would say it's the over-the-back belt grip. Again, I'm going to take a cross-collar grip, pull, expose the belt, reach over the top, and grab a belt grip right here. Now that I have a belt grip, this is the over-the-back belt grip specifically. This not only controls his hips through the use of the belt, it also controls the posture. My grip on the belt, the reason we want to grip the belt so badly is the belt gives us a very direct control of his hips. I can use the grip on the belt to really pull his hips forward and get him out of balance. But when I have an over-the-back belt grip, now if Ant were to go to posture up and away and look up toward the ceiling and pull back as hard as he can, look up, he can only get up so high because my arm over the shoulder holds his shoulder down. So that's why this is our favorite. The second grip is going to be here. I'm going to grip the seam that runs down the back of every sleeve. I'm going to grip that seam with my last 3 fingers, middle finger, ring finger, and pinky. The thumb and the forefinger will also close around it, but the horsepower from your grip really comes from those last 3 fingers. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to reach and grab the seam just underneath the cuff. And with that grip, I'm going to take his hand in underneath his hips. I'm going to take his hand in toward the center line and shove it into his hips. So when Ant goes to base with his hand, he can't. You'll often see people who get the grips, but they're lazy with the post hand. So when I go to off balance Ant, he can do it slowly so I can see. He can pummel over my wrist and reach his hand to the floor and thwart my sweep. But when I take this hand and I shove it and I'm pressing it using the heel of my hand against the fabric, Now, when Ant goes to reach for the floor, good luck. It's not happening. So that's our favorite grip. We go cross collar, over the back, belt grip, and here. And now I'm going to use these two grips to off balance them. The off balance is almost always going to be the same, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this every time we go through, but I'm going to pull myself in using my heels. I'm going to hold my heels or dig my heels into the mat and pull myself in so I can get underneath the center of gravity. Okay? Once I'm underneath the center of gravity, I look where I want to throw Ant, over in this direction, in the 11 o'clock or 10:30 direction. I'm going to commit my shoulder down to the floor, and as I commit my shoulder down to the floor and I use falling body weight, I'm going to pull on the belt to get his hip coming forward and up. And as I do this, my left butterfly hook is going to elevate Ant's right hip. And I get him up to this position here, and this is our off balance. There's other ways we can get to that over the back belt grip. I could take a cross collar grip like I did before, and I could disturb his base. I could put my foot on the knee, and as I pull, I can push his base out to get a stronger off balancing effect. How do I know I off balance him correctly? I got a hand to the floor. Now from here I go through, I score that cuff grip. As Ant goes to correct himself, I take that cuff in underneath of him, and now lo and behold, we have the same position. I look where I want to throw Ant, I commit my shoulder down to the floor, I give a good pull on the belt and a good elevation with my left leg, and we get him up into this good sweeping position. Another good way to get the over the back belt grip is to start with a straight collar grip. Because if I'm here and Ant's posturing really hard, and I can't pull his shoulder down, if I can't pull him down, I can bring myself up. So from here, straight collar grip, I post a hand to the floor and I hip heist to a knee. Now from here, I get my same cross collar, I go over the back. Now height isn't an issue. I get that belt, I sit back down, I collect the cuff, and now once again, I commit my shoulder down to the floor, looking where I want to go, and I get them up and ready to go. We also have under the arm belt grips. That's another grip we're going to look at. It's not quite as good as the over the back belt grip. It doesn't control the posture the same way by having that shoulder controlled, but it's still a pretty darn good grip. A good way to get this grip, I mean, I could just reach through the underhook. Do it on this side. I could just go through with an underhook and take the belt. But let's be honest, nobody's going to give you that grip for free. If I were to go to reach in, he's just going to bat my hands away. He's not going to give me the grips I want. One good way to get that grip is to take a cross cuff grip on your opponent and sort of pull the cuff across the body. Now we know that if I can get his arm across the body, I can expose the back. So everyone's going to try to pull back and away and get that arm back. So when I'm here, I pull the arm across the body. I take my hand off the elbow, I go through and I get a grip on the belt. Now as Ant goes to continue to pull back, he leaves me an underhook with the belt grip. So that's our underarm belt grip here, okay? With that under the arm belt grip, same thing. My second hand goes and I find the post. So I have one grip on the torso, particularly on the belt, our favorite, and one grip on the cuff. I take the cuff in, I scoop myself in, commit my shoulder down to the floor, looking where I want to throw him, and I get him out of balance. Another way we can grip the belt for great effect, and it's a little sneakier, is a front belt grip. So far we've looked at belt grips where I grip in the rear, where I either go over the back or under the arm. But once again, your opponents aren't going to just give you these grips for free, especially once you hit the sweep on them once or twice. Once you've hit it on them a few times, they're going to be more defensive. I'm going to try to get my over the back belt grips. He's going to be hand fighting. He's not going to let me get in and get to the grips I want. But one belt grip that's really hard for Ant to stop me from getting is a front belt grip. It's right there. All I'm going to do is I'm going to reach and I'm going to grab his belt right here in front, right next to the knot of his belt. Okay, that's a tough grip for him to stop me from getting. From here, my second hand, you guessed it, goes right there to control his post, and I take his hand into the center. Now from here, again, I pull myself in like we've done before, digging my heels into the mat, I pull myself in, and I'm going to throw my body to the floor, committing my body weight to the floor, putting my right shoulder down to the floor, And I'm going to use this belt grip to pull Ant up into this good off-balancing position here. And then we can look to finish from here later. So that front belt grip is also highly effective. Okay? Are there other ways to set your torso hand that don't grip the belt? Yes, there are. There's a number of them. The belt's my favorite because it gives us a direct control of the hips. But you're not always going to be able to get the belt. Sometimes even that front belt grip can be challenging. And it's good to hit these grips out of a number of different gripping possibilities. So I'm going to give you guys a general rule of thumb to think about when looking to make this sweep work. If you can't get to a belt grip, take a grip that gives a good control of your opponent's head and shoulders. Okay? So you always have one post grip and one torso grip. We saw 3 different belt grips and a number of ways to get to them. Now I'm going to show you guys other torso grips that control the head and shoulders that allow me to pull Ant down, get the head down to the floor, and force that tripod position we're looking to create. Another grip we can use is a straight lapel grip. Now these grips aren't quite as strong. They don't have chest-to-chest contact the way that an over-the-back belt grip had or an underhook belt grip. These ones give me chest-to-chest contact, which are typically stronger forms of the hook sweep, but the hook sweep can be done without chest-to-chest contact. Okay? I'm going to go through, I'm going to get my straight collar grip here. I'm going to go through and get my cuff grip here. Now from here, pulling myself in, I'm going to pull his head in front of my head and pull his head down to the floor. You're going to notice that at some point I'm going to have to switch from a pull to a push. I pull, pull, pull. Once his head comes toward my center line, I lift my elbow, and now I punch his head down to the floor as I elevate with my left leg. And we get him up to this good attacking position. So one more time in regular speed with this one. I can't get to the belt, so I set my torso grip right here on the straight lapel. I take my grip on the cuff to control the post. And now in one motion, I pull myself in, and I pull his head to the floor, and I get him up and out of balance. Alternatively, I could grip the fabric right here behind the shoulder blade. Okay, I could reach up, grab that fabric right there. Okay, again, I get my post, take the post in, I pull myself in, and we get them up and out of balance. Alternatively, I could take a grip in the armpit. That same armpit grip we've been looking at for weeks now, the seam that runs down the back of every sleeve, high near the armpit. And you could even use that grip. Try to pull your opponent up and out of balance, and get them up to that tripod position. So now we've covered a number of different grips, the first step of any good attack from the bottom position. And we've seen how we can use all those different grips to off-balance our opponent and create that tripod position. Now let's look at 4 different finishes. One is going to be easier on more naive people, and then 3 good ones that'll work even when he pops up to his feet for defense. The first one is when I have an opponent who stays down on his knees. Okay? So whichever grip I want to employ, maybe over the back belt and here. If Ant stays down on his knee, the sweep comes so easy. Okay, I'm going to be here, I'm going to throw myself in, he stays on his knee, and because he stays on his knee, he has very little ability to base out on his left-hand side. So if Ant stays on his knees, I just continue to elevate, and I turn him over. Pretty simple. Okay, you'll get that one on white belts and newer, less athletic people. But what more athletic people, what more advanced people are going to do, is they're not going to stay on their knee, they're going to pop up to their foot. Here. So now when I continue to elevate, Ant can just hop with me and eventually flatten and collapse my leg, and now he's like in a good passing position. Okay? So, when we have somebody who pops up to their feet, we need good solutions. I have 3 good ones. The 3 good solutions are, the first one, we have a reverse shrimp, where I just extend my leg, plant my foot, and I use that to pull my hips through. And that allows me to continue to push him over with my elevation leg and push his center of gravity right over his foot. The second one is to take my foot down to the floor, plant it next to my butt, and then extend to drive my hips up off the floor and put my knee on the floor. I go here, coming up onto the point of my right shoulder, and I can sweep him here, with the knee off the floor, or you could put the knee down, and then if you need to, you could continue to hop from this position. If I got up to this position, if he still didn't go over, I could hop, and hop, and hop, and hop. And the third one is where I reach out, I grab his ankle with my foot, and I sweep his foot away, okay? With the foot sweep, I want to contour the sole of my foot so that the sole of my foot is round and matches the curve of his shin, okay? So let's go through these options. So whatever grip I set, maybe an under the arm belt grip and a grip on the post. And when I go to sweep, the ant is going to pop up. Here. One good option I have is to reach with my bottom leg, grip the mat, and now I'm going to reverse shrimp. I'm going to use my right leg to pull my hips forward. The ant is going to continue to try to hop on that left foot. And I eventually push him right over, and I slide my knee across the body to get to the mount. Another one that I could do is a post or a drive leg, where now I'm going to use my grips to off-balance ant. He pops up, and now I'm going to take my right foot, plant it right next to my butt. Looking where I want to throw ant, I'm going to drive my hips up off the floor and come up to my knee, and ant's going to continue to hop on that left foot. I drive myself up to the top position, and I take the sweep. The third option we have is the foot sweep. So whatever grip, maybe I use a straight lapel grip in this case. Remember, we got a number of grips. I'm here, and I start taking ant down to the floor. I'm going to use this grip, pull him up, and he goes right here. Now, in some cases, you won't even be able to see his foot. Right now, his head is between me and his foot. I can't see where his foot is. But I have to use my right leg as a sensory tool. I have to reach and find, and there's the foot. I contour the sole of my foot to his shin, and now I'm going to briefly lift his foot off the floor first, and then cut it in. If I just start hacking at the leg and trying to cut it in, he's got a lot of body weight on that leg. It's not going to move. I need that leg to get lighter. So I take the bottom, the sole of my foot, right here underneath his ankle, and I start to apply a lifting force, and once the leg comes off the floor, now I can take it in. Now I come up to the top position, and I score my sweep. So real quickly, just a super quick recap. We want to first set our grips. One hand on the torso that will allow me to pull him in and off balance and get him in that tripod position. And one hand on the post that will stop him from posting. All right, again, we could be over the back belt. We could be under the arm belt. We could be a front belt. We could be straight lapel. We could be scapula back here. We could be in the armpit. As long as we have one grip on the torso that allows me to pull him down into that position where the head is low to the mat. And then once we have that, if he stays on his knees, we take him right over. But assuming he's not super new, he's probably going to try to base out with his left foot. And as we see that, I can finish with either a reverse shrimp, I can finish with a drive leg, or I can finish with a foot sweep. It's all, relatively similar. So play with those different grips. Use those grips to off balance your opponent, and then play with those different finishes. Your favorite grip for the hook sweep will typically be some variation of the belt grip. If you can't get to the belt, either over the back, under the arm, or front, then you can start looking at grips that control your partner's head and shoulders up here, lapel, scapula, armpit, etc. Once you get them up in that tripod position, then you have to pick and choose how you want to finish. What finishing methods do you prefer? Do you like the reverse shrimp? Are you a drive leg kind of grappler, posted leg? Or do you like the foot sweep? And you can mix and match all of these. You could use an over the back belt grip with a foot sweep finish. You could use an under the arm belt grip with a foot sweep finish. You could use a front belt grip with a foot sweep. or over the back belt with a post leg finish, or a reverse shrimp finish. It really doesn't matter. Take whichever options you like, plug them and play with different combinations and see which ones you end up liking ultimately, okay? So that's a really good introduction to our hook sweeps. Thanks for watching, guys.